It is 6:30 here in Douala. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching Viewpoint here on DBS television. In today's edition of the program, we are looking at issues concerning non-governmental organizations in Cameroon, their operations, how they are being carried out in the country. And in today's edition of the program, we are receiving a lady and a gentleman, and they are not new. Of course, you would have seen them over and again here on DBS television. Let's welcome Evelyn Tata Maya. Good evening, and thank you for accepting our invitation.
Thank you, Mr. Mange. It's always a pleasure to be here on DBS, and thank you, televiewers, as you watch today's edition.
And like I was asking, I think this will be the second time, first time that we're having you in this year, 2021.
This is second time.
The second time.
Yeah.
But for some time you've been away, that's why
Sure.
Some viewers would be seeing it as a new person. She's being accompanied by Mr. Kum Jerum. Mr. Kum, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Venatius. It's a pleasure to be once more in your program this very great evening to share our viewpoints on issues pertaining to our country.
And these are those issues that we want to discuss. So let's take the first part of the program, that is the question and answer session. Part one of the program, we take the questions, and Mr. Kum, I begin with you. Non-governmental organizations in Cameroon, are they for the good of Cameroonians?
Yes, to a greater extent.
Yes, to a greater extent. Evelyn, are they for the good of Cameroonians?
Yes, non-governmental organizations are actually for the good of Cameroonians.
She says they are for the good of Cameroonians. We take the second question. Evelyn, I remain with you. Can the government control the activities of these organizations?
I would say no too, because of the term control in the sentence. Coordinating, it's good, but controlling, no.
They should be able to coordinate and not control. Yeah. Mr. Kum, can they control or not? Can the government control them?
To an extent,
yes.
Because the government acts as a regulator between the public and the private sector,
yes,
and the activities of both.
So the government can control them to an extent.
Yes.
Those are the extents that we are going to get in the second part of the program. Let's take the second part. If you are just joining us, you're watching Viewpoint here on DBS television, and we are also broadcasting live on our Facebook page, like you have the address on your screen. For some time, the government of Cameroon has been going through an uphill task trying to deal with the activities of non-governmental organizations in Cameroon. We could cite examples like the Human Rights Watch that has always been a problem with the government in relation to the abuse of human rights, especially in the ongoing crisis in the northwest and southwest regions. It was equally a situation with the 2018 presidential election, when Cameroonians were taken aback with the election observation by a non-governmental organization which at the end of the day did not recognize their presence in Cameroon, although officials said they were observing elections in Cameroon. That is why in today's edition of the program, we are asking a question. These non-governmental organizations working in Cameroon, are they working for the good of Cameroonians, or they are working for their own good? And Evelyn, you think that they are working for the good of Cameroonians?
Yes, I think so, Mr. Mange, because, non-governmental organization can work in three dimensions.
Yes.
They can complement the government, they can supplement the government, and at some times the government might also see them as a rivalry to their activities. When I mean complement, it simply means there are some tasks that the government partner with non-governmental organizations to see to it that it comes to reality or becomes sustainable. And when I say supplement, it means there are some tasks that the government is unable to fulfill, that these non-governmental organizations go ahead to do this task that the government is unable to reach those levels. Let me just take for an example, the government maybe is trying to battle with unemployment for our youth, and non-governmental organizations can fill in that gap, supplement it, because once non-governmental organizations are set in place, you see that they create employment, even though most of them might be volunteers, but at least they chip in and they pay some of these youths that keep them busy. And some of them go in for capacity building, some of them go in as far as learning trades, or doing something that is sustainable for their life, like some non-governmental organizations. Let me just give an example of what is happening. Like we have the internally displaced citizens. Organizations that are put in place are making sure that this group of persons are catered for, partnering with the government, that's complementing the work of the government. And some of these non-governmental organizations, we work in relations to state policies. It's not like the organizations work on their own, because they have a legalized constitution that is done by the state. But at one moment in time, they equally have to look into these policies, whether the government is doing what is right. And that's when the government sees that they are being rivals to the government.
Evelyn, when you spoke about the IDPs who are in the country and there's non-governmental organizations helping them.
Yes.
Is it genuine? Are they helping because these Cameroonians need help, or they are using the IDPs as a means to their end?
I would say I will not dig deep into the means to their end, but let me pick it from the positive aspect. Coming from the background of an NGO myself, I just came back from the villages that are inaccessible, maybe with the government officials. So we take to that extent to make sure that this group of people have the need, have the supplies they need, that maybe the government might not reach those levels.
Yes.
So even if the non-governmental organizations are doing it for their own good, it's simply to sustain these activities itself. There is nothing you would say non-governmental organizations are doing it for themselves. They are doing it
the reason I am asking is, most of these non-governmental organizations, we understand that they are being sponsored by foreign benefactors, foreign countries, foreign associations.
Let me say it this way. That's a misconception.
That is it. That's why we are discussing it.
It is a misconception, because being a founder myself of an NGO, that is the notion people have.
That these foreigners, they give funds and then dictate how you should work.
Before you even reach at the level of being funded by a foreign body or by the government itself, you need some form of credibility. And to reach this level of credibility, it takes you like 10 years. It's not something that just pop up. Like now, what I'm doing is out of pocket doing things by myself with my team, making sure that when you have a call to do something good, you don't wait for foreign aid, but you do the work. They see the activities and decide that, okay, we are going to sponsor this activity, but you should be accountable.
Are these activities not being done targeting a particular benefactor outside who would then appreciate it and then come in, or is it being done for the fact, doing it genuinely because there is the need that you can address?
There is a need. NGOs are put in place because they have identified a need. There are civil societies, like the NGO I'm talking about, We Fight Cancer. There are NGOs that are uniquely for IDPs. There are NGOs uniquely fighting other things happening in our society, maybe unemployment. So every NGO, before you even go to legalize your constitution, you must have a unique cause you want to attain. So you go particularly with that need, and that's why I said the government has to coordinate the activities, because when you go in for legalization, you are in to that constitution. You don't go out of what you had legalized. That's when you are going out of the norms of what you have been stated to do as an NGO. So you are identifying a particular need and you are addressing the need.
Okay. Evelyn, we'll come back to you. Let us take Mr. Kum Jerome, who thinks that, yes, they are working for the good of Cameroonians, but to a certain extent. Mr. Kum, can we hear you out?
Mr. Venatius, going back to what Madam Maya has already said, and that these NGOs are there to complement, supplement, and put hands in glove with the government to better up the society. These are non-profit making organizations. They are not out to make any material or financial gains, and they come in because they have identified a need that is lacking, and so they have come to fill the gap and make the people live happily in the social, economic, and political domain and milieus. So they are actually working for the good of the people because they are coming in not actually for the well-to-do or for an economy or for a nation that is already well stable, but they are coming in for those who need this help. They are mostly humanitarians. Their mission is philanthropic. They are out to render, that is what we call volunteer services. In the economic domain, they will come in their capacity to train youth in different capacity. We've had non-governmental organization in the medical domain where they train health practitioners, nurses, and others. And then they equally provide maybe drugs. As Maya rightly talk of maybe in crisis-stricken areas.
Like NGOs for IDPs.
NGOs for IDPs.
For young girls.
And
IDPs
so on.
for single women.
For single women.
Single mothers.
Single mothers and even refugees. Because when we talk of UNHR, United Nations High Commission for Refugees, it could be termed an NGO because they actually come in to assist these people in order to cope with life. They are actually for the good of the country because they act as a check and balance. That is why, to an extent, when they go as like touching the part of the government will see them as a rival, and they will do everything possible according to their capacity, as they always claim we are sovereign, to stop them from encroaching into their agenda that they already have. We saw it with a lot of, NGOs in 2018.
Mr. Kum, I will come in here. Is it that the government is unable to see the good that these non-governmental organizations are doing for her citizens in such a way to consider them as a rival?
Yes, they mostly consider them as rival when they come to the political domain. And even in the economic domain, Mr. Venatius, we are in the 21st century where we have a lot of, bad faith people. How do we used to call it? Wolves in sheep clothing. Some of these guys actually come in as, humanitarians, angels, but they are devils in disguise. What they actually
that's the other extent of...
Yes, that's the other extent I was talking about. That is where the government focus its energy and power to ooze them out. Whereas majority of them, 90% of them, they are goodwill people, kind people who have humanity in heart, and they are ready to offer their help, their love, time, material, money to the people that are in need. So when we talk of like this political domain, because humanitarians or NGOs act in economic, political, social. In the political domain, when they are checking like the fairness of an election, they are out to protect the less privileged, and the less privileged here are always the opposition parties.
Okay, you have touched a point. You have touched a point where I wanted us to look at it about the election. Yes, where you say they are there to protect the less
privileged. People who are like helpless.
We had a situation in Cameroon here, 2018, during presidential elections. We have some international observers who came in here, and it was later, because they were broadcasted on state television, and it was later understood that the non-governmental organization disclaimed the fact that they sent representatives to Cameroon to observe the presidential elections in Cameroon. Who is behind what?
Now, Mr. Venatius, as I earlier told you, you know, these people, they came in not on their own. They were sponsored by some people from the house.
They were sponsored by the government because they could not come and observe a presidential election without the signature or the, you know, the approval of the government.
They were sponsored by the government.
Yes.
In order to do the job in favor of the government.
Yes.
So much so that if the government is declared the winner, that is the ruling party is declared the winner, it should be credible. But unfortunate for them, we are in the 21st century where every trick is being unveiled and discovered. So that is one way they were using in order to fight the NGOs, because the fight is not just like very real and confronting. No, they take another mass. It's just like the multiplicity of, you know, many political parties. It is another way for the ruling party to weaken and destroy the main opposition party that could come up as a challenge to them. So this government, they see it as a rivalry if they identify some loopholes
in their
that there are human rights abuses in many areas, many sectors of the country or the government, and they would like to tackle you in their own way. Like I saw what used to happen with Aya, the humanitarian. Aya Foundation is an NGO because of the fact that maybe he is an Anglophone or he was like carrying help to the population in need. These people were attacked and their activities were halted to an extent in several instances in the northwest and southwest regions. Why? Because they saw the activity of this organization to be helpful to the people. I don't know whether the government...
No, but Mr. Kum, they say that there can be no smoke without fire, because the situation here was they you know, behind the idea of bringing herb to the people, that herb was just a smoke screen to something deeper than the herb.
That's why I told you that their light is more focused on the bad part of NGOs. As I told you, they could come in sheep clothing, whether they are actually wolves. Because according to the government in this case, they thought that behind the humanitarian helps, they may be supplying maybe weapons and other things to the separatist fighters, which was a fallacy, which is completely wrong. So NGOs, they play a better role in the government of countries that have the people at heart, because the government cannot handle everything adequately on its own with its own resources. In even some instances, Mr. Venatius, the government can sponsor or can do some funding to NGOs. Yes, because the NGOs, they know how to reach to the people. They can reach out to the people without any political lining. You will discover with me that here in Cameroon, in our country, everything is apolitical.
Everything is politicized.
Everything is politicized.
Okay, not
you want to do, yes, everything is politicized. You want to do it, from which political party are you coming from? You want to do this, but if it is in the hands of an NGO, which is non-partisan, it will be of greater help, and it will go far as helping the less privileged who need the help. So their role, it can never be undermined as far as Cameroon is concerned.
Okay, Mr. Kum, before we take question 2, Evelyn, we want to find out, is the government of Cameroon subsidizing the activities of these non-governmental organizations?
I would say few
some of the organizations.
Some of the organizations.
Home, local non-governmental organizations or international non-governmental organizations?
Let's start with the local NGOs.
Mm-hmm.
Like I made mention before, that if what you are doing is credible,
mm-hmm.
it can be subsidized. They can give, let me call it subvention,
mm-hmm.
to some of these non-governmental organizations, but it takes time. There are certain...
they need to study well.
Absolutely.
To be
they
sure
need to
of your
take
activities.
time and look at your activities
mm-hmm.
and see if what you are actually doing is right
mm-hmm.
or falls in the norms of your constitution.
Mm-hmm.
Then they cannot check if you are credible enough for them to
subvent.
Absolutely.
Okay, you said instead of controlling the activities of these non-governmental organizations, the government should rather be coordinating their activities. At the beginning of the program, I indicated a certain non-governmental organization. It has an international character, Human Rights Watch. they have always been on a kind of, punch game between the government of Cameroon and Human Rights Watch. I start from especially with the ongoing crisis, where the government this non-governmental organization gives out their report, and the government reacting, denying them. And I remember in 2017, this non-governmental organization was outlawed, banned from Cameroon. Yet they still give out their reports concerning human rights abuses in Cameroon. How can the government coordinate their activities?
Let me state that when I mention three elements,
yes,
that
complement, supplement, and at times they can be rivalry.
Absolutely. Let me pick that rivalry part, and this has to do with a lot of policies. When the state policies, let me put public policies, it's not something that you just come in and you want to tell the government this is what you have done, which is wrong, you need to adjust it. Organizations put eyes to see what is done wrong by the government, and that needs correction. I'll put it in terms of advocacy. When you see an NGO advocating for the rights of the humans in the society, it means that policy is not favoring the needy in the society. And believe me, the government doesn't take that line down. They must retaliate that policy is correct and must be as such. So that is where the rivalry comes in, when you see most of the organizations tell the government that adjust this policy or they will revolt. That's why you have the activists, because the policy that is put in place doesn't favor anybody and has to be changed. And the government on their own will say, this is what we think that is right and must be done as such. That's where you have these conflicting ideas between NGOs and the government. And believe me, even the Human Rights Watch, even if they're giving their report, as long as the government says what they are doing is incorrect, you see where the rivalry is coming in. They are giving their reports, the government is denying it, and they keep giving because they know that this is what we know that is right, and the government is saying this is what we know that is right. Okay,
Evelyn, when you look at what is happening, we are talking about human rights abuses in Cameroon, and you realize that Cameroon is a partner, a signatory to the UN terms of the respect of human rights. Can we say that this non-governmental organization, Human Rights Watch, has a better stand to interpret what is abuse of this human right than the government of Cameroon? Do they stand in a better position to decry the abuse of these rights of citizens more than UN, a recognized international organization that Cameroon is a signatory? Remember, Cameroon is a signatory to the United Nations and not with the Human Rights Watch.
That's kind of tricky there. Let me just put it that way, because UN as well as human rights. When the organization Human Rights, like the name depicts itself,
yes,
you are crying like John in the wilderness that this is what I am seeing, and United Nations is crying in another aspect, like the name also depicts. Maybe you are crying for the rights of these people. The UN is seeing another thing. The solution here, let me just put it this way. If we can always come to, this is a long rope that is being pulled, and if we don't come to terms, it will continue to be pulled and the population will keep suffering. So for me, even if you say UN has more rights, human rights as well has, because rights,
that's a partner that Cameroon has gone into a partnership with.
And believe me, we are good at paperwork. We are not good at action. That's where we are killing ourselves. I keep saying, if we can only implement what we put on paper, we will be far gone into our activities. You can be killed here, and I'm not saying that you are being killed. I will simply state that you did this and this, what happened to you. But what human rights might be seeing is, I saw you being killed. And UN is seeing another thing, the government is seeing another thing. So we have to come to terms that the population is actually suffering as we continue with these battles.
Let us take Mr. Kum. Our time is actually running out. Mr. Kum, you think that the government can control them to an extent?
Yes. Every government has its own policies stipulated in the constitution, and they can control the activity of
Any group within
any
its territory.
group within its national territory, within its powers. So, one, activities of humanitarian, after being investigated and discovered that they are not in line with state policies, they may give a direct embargo. Yes, to directly ban it. We don't want this in this country. They have the power and the authority. If you want to resist, they take you to the constitution, that our constitution does not permit this.
Yes.
Two, if you act as a rivalry to the states, they have their own way of stopping you, because there cannot be two lions in the same cage.
Of course.
If you want to take them out of the place, or to make them look as if they were Judas in front of their own very population, no, they will do everything within their own power, strength, and capacity to ooze you out and make the people believe that they are the right way and they are doing the right thing and they know what is good for them. Then, controlling is not really possible. It's not really a good term.
Yeah, like she said, she was
not
thinking
really,
of coordinating it.
Yes, coordinating, because they will act as a broker. Yes, if maybe like some human NGOs, they come in presenting something else, but behind the scene they are doing something else. I saw babies in Chad who were adopted, and I believe that these babies were adopted via some of these NGOs, and thanks to President Idris Deby, they were tracked. So if such things are discovered, the government actually had to stop it,
even ban them
and send them away. And to an extent, if what these humanitarians are doing, like what Ayad Foundation is doing, Bindumlem and some others, we are actually training and empowering the youth for peace building, capacity building, economic empowerment, and human development. No, they cannot actually succeed, because before they actually come into implementing maybe either the embargo, they must have trained people who will take the relay to other ends of their country in order to realize their goals and objectives.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kum. Time is against us. Maya, if you were to talk to some of these non-governmental organizations, maybe in 20 seconds, what would you tell them in relation to respecting state institutions?
I will be talking to myself.
Of course, of course.
Mr. Stamange, I'm very strict when it has to do with what our organization have legalized. We follow our constitution, and I will say the same to all the NGOs out there. Don't go and legalize something and come and implement something and close doors.
Yes.
You are not being honest to yourself. You are not being honest to the humans around you, nor to the government itself. So when you go in to legalize your constitution, make sure you are in the norms of what you have legalized, because they will always coordinate and watch you to see if you are actually implementing what is on the paper.
Thank you so much, Madam, for being there. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mange.
Thank you, Mr. Kum, for being there.
Oh, the pleasure is mine, Mr. Venatius.
We would have loved to take the discussions further, but then we will take it further on our Facebook page. Let's keep the discussion going. That's all we had time for today's edition of the program. Immediately after this, Cynthia Ngwemo will be coming up with the news in the English language. Until we meet again tomorrow, have a blessed evening and goodbye.
Coronavirus is not an imagination or an invention. It is a real threat that spares no one. We are already counting so many casualties the world over. The situation is